Welcome to the Nightmare Emporium. Here we take a deep dive into some grisly tales that are bound to make you lose your head. Now, let's check in with our host, the macabre marvel herself, to see what she has in store for us this week.
Attic. Good night, baby. I love you.
Night, Mama. Love you too.
I turned off the light and shut the door to my daughter's room. She just turned 3 last week and has ramped up her resistance to sleep. She's a master at stalling, and I know I'll be back in her room a dozen more times before she's asleep. Half of her sleep problems recently came from her brand new, quote, playroom. Last week, at her birthday party, her older cousins were playing a game of tag through the house, while the younger ones played out in the yard. It was all fine and fun until the game got out of hand, and one of the kids ended up crashing through a wooden panel located in my daughter's room. The panel is just covering a part of the crawl space that connects to one of our 2 attics. The first attic is in the garage, and the second one is upstairs and stretches over the master bedroom, which is on the first floor. Our daughter's reaction to this new discovery was, of course, a series of squeals and excited hops. We had just moved into our house 4 weeks ago, and we're still getting unpacked and adjusted. We hadn't even gotten a chance to check out the crawl space ourselves before the accident, and, just as most unfinished things in the house, hadn't started on repairing the panel yet. Our old house was a lot smaller, and our daughter was ecstatic to be doubling the size of her bedroom. A secret playroom was about as exciting as it gets, and the temptation to enter was irresistible to her. Although we were strict with her about not playing in the crawl space, it didn't stop her from ripping the tape off and entering after we'd put her to bed. Luckily, the space was right over our bedroom, so we could hear the second she'd go in, and we were quick to get her out before she could get hurt. I was just sitting down to finish folding laundry when I heard the usual muffled, "Mama!" I shared an annoyed glance with my husband, who reluctantly volunteered to settle her back down. He was gone for a few moments before rejoining me on the couch. I raised an eyebrow at him. He smirked and said she was thirsty. Typical stalling tactic. We both shared a knowing look and shrugged before turning our attention back to the TV. About 20 minutes went by before she tried again. This time, I went back in. As I entered the room, I walked straight towards her bed until I noticed the bed was empty. I scanned the dark room until my eyes detected a small figure standing near the closet, inches away from the duct-taped panel. "Baby, not tonight. Daddy and I told you, that's not a playroom. You could get really hurt in there. Back to bed, right now." The tiny frame of our daughter defeatedly slumped her shoulders and headed back to bed. I kissed her adorably soft and always rosy cheeks and warned her not to get back up again, and we'd see her in the morning. She nodded and rolled over, snuggling her favorite stuffed pink bear. The rest of our evening played out in front of the television until my husband and I were ready for bed. He fed the dogs while I did one last check on our daughter. She was sleeping peacefully. I shifted my gaze to the panel. The duct tape was still in place. Good. By the time I got into bed, my husband was settled in and waiting for me. His jeans were lazily kicked off on the floor, along with his shirt and socks. I motioned to them, and he shrugged sheepishly. I happily collapsed onto the bed and waited. He's one of those who can't sleep without touching someone, so as usual, he scooted over to my side up against my back. We've got to fix that panel tomorrow. It really freaks me out that she keeps getting in there. She could fall into the insulation. I was trying not to sound naggy. I'll do it as soon as I get home from work. He leaned over and kissed my cheek before turning back over and falling silent. I closed my eyes and drifted off. I heard the thumping sound above my head around 1 a.m. I'd heard it before, but not usually in the middle of the night. That girl was in big trouble. I rolled over, almost on top of my husband, and started shaking him. "Babe," I whispered, "she's in the space again." He grumbled something about taking away TV for tomorrow and sleepily threw his legs over the side of the bed. I heard his heavy steps climb higher until they hit the carpet and got quiet. I heard her bedroom door open and waited a bit for him to head back down, but he was taking too long, and I assumed that maybe he'd felt bad and laid with her after the scolding he'd dished out. I fell back asleep. When I woke up again, it was 2:30 a.m. I felt my husband's body next to me, so I snuggled up to him and started dozing back off. That's when I heard it again, the thumping of feet above our heads in the crawl space. I nudged him. "Babe, did you close it back up? She's in there again." He was clearly half asleep when he mumbled, You're paranoid." I was about to say something snappy, but was cut off by a different sound. This time, the thumping sounded more like dragging. I could definitely hear something being pulled across the floor. Now, it's only plywood up there, so anything hard, including my daughter's toy turtle that's attached to a string for pulling purposes, could be easily heard. That was my initial conclusion to the noise when I heard the scurrying. My daughter is fast, but this was animalistic at best. I was frozen, listening and trying to decipher if all the noise could actually be from above, or if it was maybe outside, when I heard my daughter scream. It was the worst sound I'd ever heard. It sounded panicked, but more than that, it sounded like a pain scream. I jolted up and smacked my husband awake. He'd heard the scream too and was sitting up by the time I was throwing our bedroom door open. I was in a panic, about to sprint up the stairs when my husband shouted, "No!" "What?" I shouted back, still half turned to fly up the stairs. Our daughter was in danger. How could he possibly think we should stay? "Do not go up there!" The scraping and scurrying continued, even more frenzied. I was nearing rage and about to turn, ignoring him, when I saw her. On my husband's side of the bed, my daughter sat up, clutching her bear and rubbing one of her sleepy eyes. My heart stuttered. I knew what I had heard, but I couldn't deny the fact that our daughter was sitting in our bed. I heard more scuffles from upstairs and a loud crash. My daughter's voice whimpered and echoed down the stairs, piercing my heart and making it almost impossible to turn away. The office door slammed, which snapped me back and sent me flying back into our bedroom. I shut the door as my husband screamed, "Lock it!" The office was down the hall from our daughter's room. Whatever was up there had left her room. My husband and I locked eyes. We were thinking the exact same thing. Get out. And that's exactly what we did. He grabbed our daughter while I ran to the window. I frantically grasped at the locks, turning one easily, but struggling with the other until my husband's hand yanked it open in one try. I could hear a mess of scratching and thumping as I climbed through the window. As my husband handed our daughter out to me, I distinctly heard the sound of someone sprinting down the wooden stairs. My husband nearly flew out the window, landing hard on the lawn, but almost instantly was on his feet, running towards the car. I'll never forget that night. We escaped with nothing but our cell phones and the clothes we were wearing. We're lucky my husband had left his car keys in the pocket of his jeans. We made a police report, but no one or nothing concrete turned up. They made note of the wooden panel being busted and that there was a broken window in the uppermost part of the attic. The strange part about the window was that it was broken from the inside out. They suggested a list of nocturnal animals that could have been living in our attic, but nothing explained what we heard that night. I could tell they weren't taking it seriously. My husband told me later that when I woke him up to get our daughter out of the space, he found her fast asleep in bed, and the panel was still taped. He thought I dreamt the noise, but I brought her to bed with us because he didn't want me to worry. I'll never thank him enough for that decision. As for whatever was in our house, I hope we never find out what it was or what it wanted. We just moved.
Well, wasn't that just a scream? Until next time, our fiendish friends, remember to stay scared, and sometimes it's more than just a story.